Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Daily Update. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and in today's edition, we're going to focus on the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, the situation in Syria, which is evolving as we speak, and no less important, of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran. But before we touch on all those countries and the latest developments in those countries, let's introduce our experts for today. To start with the top left, Brigadier General in Reserve Relik Shafir, formerly a Israel Air Force commander as well as a fighter pilot. Next to him is Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, who is the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. And last but certainly not least is Brigadier General in Reserve Yossi Kuperwasser, formerly the Director General of the Israeli Ministry for Strategic Affairs, as well as the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Unit, currently the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. And with that, General Kuperwasser, I'd like to start with you. The Islamist Hamas continues to defiantly refuse to return all the 13 hostages who've been murdered in captivity, under its hands, of course. And the Qataris came out and actually stated, the Prime Minister, Mohammed Abdulrahman Thani, highlighted that, yes, indeed, it's very uncomfortable, but Hamas is in violation of the deal, particularly focusing on the fact that they have killed an IDF soldier who operated in accordance with the guidelines and the outline of Phase 1 of President Trump's 21-point plan. What are we to take out of that? And irrespective of the fact that the ceasefire still holds, it seems like the violations are starting to mount.
Well, yes, this was not the first violation of Hamas of the ceasefire agreement. And when it happens once, you can come up with all kinds of excuses. These were people that were not subordinated to Hamas or whatever. When it happens twice, you can't use the same excuses twice. And it's clear that Hamas is playing on our nerves. And beyond that, the issue of delaying the return of the bodies of the deceased hostages is also some sort of a breach of the agreement, because they were supposed to bring everybody within 72 hours. Now, today they are going to deliver, actually, as we speak, the 2 more bodies are supposed to be delivered. And Israel is not under time pressure. It's not that there is such a big time pressure. We can wait a couple of more days before they bring back all the bodies of the deceased hostages. But at the same time, we don't have endless time, and they have to rush up and show that they are committed to the ceasefire. And all kinds of sanctions are considered in order to encourage them to stand by their commitments. I think that everybody's patience is running thin. If the Qataris are saying that Hamas is in violation of the ceasefire, you can imagine what everybody else thinks. So we have to put pressure on Hamas. And the main issue is still awaiting us. The terror attack here, terror attack there, it still can be overcome, and we can all say that the ceasefire holds. And certain delay in the return of the hostages' bodies is also something that can be excused to some extent, although in my mind they know where at least 8 to 10 of the bodies are, and they're just playing for time. But we can tolerate that for a short period of time. But the main obstacle is still waiting for us, and this is the refusal of Hamas to disarm themselves, lay down their arms. This is the key element of the deal. And if they're going to refuse to do that, then we should have to go back to placing all kinds of pressure tools against them, including maybe also some military moves.
Thank you, General Kuperwasser. General Shafir, when we're talking about Hamas, naturally, right now, the United States is accepting the narrative being sold to it by the Qataris, in which only parts of Hamas are rogue, which is obviously very convenient. The Qatari Prime Minister stated that they couldn't necessarily corroborate it, but the United States and Qatar, and naturally all those that are committed to this 21-point plan, do find it quite convenient for the time being. With that being said, as General Kuperwasser mentioned, time is running out. It's not endless. And it seems like Hamas, objectively, if we're looking at the field, are buying to time while they are positioning themselves potentially for another round of fighting. What are we to take out of that, and what are they buying the time for?
Excuse me for not aligning with maybe the general thoughts, but let's take an example of Jewish rogue groups in Judea and Samaria that are terrorizing the Palestinians. The Israeli army is in control of that area. There's police in that area, and they're not able to stop these attacks on Palestinians. What are we to say of the situation of the Israeli forces? I'm not obviously comparing, but I'm only showing that you can't always control, even if you're an organized military and organized country, you're not able to gather, let's say, 100,000 personal weapons in Judea and Samaria and thousands of weapons within the Arab towns and villages in Israel. So we wouldn't be surprised if Hamas, following a 2 year decimation of most of their leaders, most of their commanders, most of the communications are not able to control every small group who's hiding in the tunnels, etc. Same is to be said for the bodies of the deceased Israeli hostages. Some of the commanders were killed, those who knew where the bodies were. Some of the buildings were demolished and toppled over. So I think these are not excuses. These are realities that we don't want to obviously be a part of or even condone. And when we say that they know where all the bodies are, this is what we would like. This is the
I didn't
pressure
say all the
we are
bodies. I said
applying. What the truth is,
the
I don't
more
know what the
bodies.
truth is, but I'm not sure that both sides are revealing all their cards.
Gerald Kupilvaso, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I didn't say all the bodies. I said more bodies, and we know that for a fact. It's when they were needed to show that they are able to return more bodies, they were able to do that. As the 2 bodies that are delivered today were already in their hands yesterday. So it's they know the whereabouts of more bodies. I didn't say all the bodies. There are some bodies that to which relics analysis is relevant. That's true, but more bodies are known by Hamas, and they play for time. And regarding the other issue of whether they control everybody in the Gaza Strip, well, this is a two-edged sword. It's, if they don't, then they actually don't represent anything in the Gaza Strip. They took upon themselves to make sure that there is a ceasefire, as those who represent everybody in the Middle East, in the Gaza Strip. If they don't, then what's the point of making a deal with them in the first place?
Indeed, and with that being said, also the fringes of the settlers that you referred to about the violence in particularly in Judea as well as in Samaria parts of that, you're referring, of course, to the Hilltop Youth, which is a criminal gang that operates there in a very vicious way, and the IDF is not responsible in policing them. Rather, the border police is in charge of that, and they have been quite active on that front. I happen to have looked into that just recently, and there are various activities being undertaken in order to ensure to try and rein those criminals without a reason of a doubt that they're trying to rein them in. Unfortunately, this also causes altercations between the border police and those Hilltop Youth, who are doing this, of course, out of their own ideological reasons and other reasonings behind that. But General Gavish, I'd like to dive deeper into the Gaza Strip with a final straw to this area, and that is the CMCC, the Civil Military Center that the United States has opened under its command, Central Command. in order to enforce the 21-point plan, at least the first phase, with the hopes of entering into a second phase at some point. It is drawing in more and more militaries from all over the world, and yet it seems that its capacity to really draw in major contributions of field forces is still quite limited.
Well, I think, Jonathan, you said the key words, and this is the enforce. The main challenge of this organization and everything that is being built here in Israel is really to enforce the agreement, and this is what we all hope that would happen. We also have to remember that, military organization, as much they know how to do things quite rapidly. It takes some time to make sure that all the forces are there, that all the regulations were decided, all the mechanisms are working, everything is fully aligned, people are continuously working with each other, understand each other, and it's even more challenging when you have more and more forces that are or countries that are joining into this organization, and you have to bring in everyone and make him being part of it. And there is, of course, a lot of politics, so who would be and who won't be, and who is more classified, and who could be exposed to what, and so on. So it's a very challenging job. But of course, I trust CENTCOM because this is their bread and butter. They know how to do it. This is how they work in CENTCOM, or they with a lot of other forces that are there. This is for sure something that this is the bread and butter of CENTCOM. They know how to do it. This is what they do within the region. Different countries, different interests, and they are the one that are really gathering everyone into one mission. So I think this is something that for sure can be done. So it is complicated. It will take some time. We have to exercise some patience, which we don't have here in Israel, but we would have to exercise it. But I'm sure that with the time, and this is what would happen. And I'm going back to my first note and what you've mentioned, Jonathan. It is enforcing organization, and this is very, very important, because otherwise it won't work.
Enforcement mechanism. For this to be successful, obviously, the demilitarization of the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates throughout the Gaza Strip is vital for the success of all other plans that are part of this 21-point outline. General Cooper-Wasser, let's redivert our attention to Lebanon. Tomorrow, we are expected to hear an address by the Secretary General of the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, namely Naim Qassem, during the course of which he is expected also to address the efforts by the Lebanese government to reach some sort of accommodation that would see this terror organization disarmed. What are the prospects of that? I hear a lot of skepticism, not only here in Israel, but also in the United States as of late.
Well, so far we haven't heard Hezbollah expressing readiness to disarm. With all the well-known reasons that they use in order to explain why they shouldn't do that. And I'm skeptical that they will do it tomorrow. They believe their focus right now is on regrouping and rearming themselves. They are trying to get support from the Iranians for that purpose. They're trying to smuggle arms from all kinds of places. They're trying to build and rebuild their capabilities. This is their main effort right now. So it's hard to expect them at this point to express readiness to disarm. On top of that, they still believe that they're strong enough in order to face the Lebanese army, so that even if there's going to be an attempt to disarm them by force, they can resist that successfully. And therefore, they don't think that they need to change the main policy and being the armed element that protects Hezbollah, protects Lebanon against Israel. And if they are going to be ready to be disarmed, then the raison d'etre of this organization is going to be questioned. So it's very difficult to envisage that they will do something like that. That said, on the other hand, the pressure on Lebanon is building up. And it's clear that if the Lebanese are not going to be successful in convincing Hezbollah to disarm, then the situation is going to be worsening. And if Hezbollah is going to keep moving towards rearming itself, then Israel may take harsher measures against Hezbollah. We keep hitting Hezbollah targets day in, day out. And there's clear message from Israel that we should not tolerate regrouping of Hezbollah. So the situation is very dire. And the Lebanese military and the Lebanese government are in a very difficult place between the different pressures that are facing.
Thank you, General Cooper-Vassel. General Shafir, Israel has been enforcing the ceasefire since the 27th of November of last year, during the course of which hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of aerial strikes have already been conducted against Hezbollah's attempts, of course, to rearm. Same happened yesterday, and we are seeing the Israeli Air Force really taking this seriously. But is this enough?
In the long term, it may be enough because if, as Yossi had just mentioned, the Hezbollah is between the sledge and the hard place, the hammer and the hard place. The more you hit them, the more they're cracked. So we relate to the government of Lebanon as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We shouldn't be seen as too friendly with them. Otherwise, they would be considered as collaborators. But for our own interest, we should hit the way we do everything in the southern part of Lebanon that looks like a trial to rearm or regroup. But not only there, also in the Bekaa Valley, which is the stronghold of the Shia, and the routes that lead to that area, be it through the air or through sea, and the continuous pressure will weaken the Hezbollah. The Iranians are not in a good position to put too much pressure because they're under their own pressure at home. Also with Iranians that are chanting that they don't want to help others, they want to help themselves against the aid that their leaders are lending Hezbollah. So just keep on the pressure with patience, not to go overboard so that the French and Americans are playing along with us. And that pressure, I believe, and let's hope, that Hezbollah will eventually succumb as they're weakened day in, day out.
Thank you, General Shafir. General Gavisha, there are reports that the Lebanese armed forces managed to degrade Hezbollah's surface-to-surface capabilities quite substantively already. Everything that was south of the Litani River and marked locations that UNIFIL had in its Rolodex, and therefore the Lebanese armed forces were proactive on this front. But anything that the Lebanese armed forces or the government at that knows about that has not been specifically reported about by either Israel or the UNIFIL forces, it seems like they are shying away from dealing with those weapons. Are we concerned potentially that Hezbollah is trying to redefine the parameters of its relationship with Beirut, and by doing so to once again have an advantage in the context of the fact that it happens to be a cartel with global enterprise that ultimately is also very vital to the Lebanese economy?
I don't think that we would be surprised seeing and understanding that the Hezbollah is not going to let it go, or to be in a position that he would let back all his weapons and so on. So I think that we are still in the point that each one of the both forces, the Lebanese government from one side and the Hezbollah from the other side, is trying to see where how much he could push these borders. The good news is that the Lebanese government is saying that this is his plan. He have backup from the international community, for sure United States, France, Saudi, which becomes a big player on that. But to enforce it is very, very hard. We have to remember that for years and years, it is not that the Lebanese armed forces were very strong, capable, with very sophisticated armory or any other military systems that they could enforce it very easily. Their forces are not so trained, the amount of soldiers that they have and so on. I mean, this is a real challenge. So we could say that things are going in the right way, but it is also a question of what would be of course, the Hezbollah position. On that, I could say that, if we could be innovative in a way, it might be that the same idea that worked in Lebanon, in the Gaza Strip, would work in Lebanon. If there would be a group of countries, majority of them from the Mediterranean, that would like to support the Lebanese effort and press the Hezbollah, and of course by that pressing also Iran. I think that could be very interesting if this thing would happen also there. So we'll see. Time will tell. There are some good indications, but it is a very challenging mission for the Lebanese government and defense forces of Lebanon.
Thank you, General Gavish. We don't have very much time left, and yet it's very important to highlight that since the massacre committed by the Damascus regime and various jihadist forces, Islamist forces, backed by the current government there against the southern communities of Syria, namely in Sueda Governorate, the situation has evolved quite rapidly into what may be termed a humanitarian catastrophe in the making, just under the nose of many Western nations that are being supportive of the Damascus regime. We are seeing that now people have to deal with new lows of humanitarian commodities, critical commodities, to include roughly 10 liters of just water per day per person. Just to put things in perspective, in the United States, it goes up to hundreds of liters of water per day. In Israel, it is at one of the best standards globally at 100 liters of water. And when the situation was as such in specific areas of the Gaza Strip, the United Nations was very quick to define those as critical, acute situation that is nearing the situation of famine. So right now we are seeing this evolve into a real catastrophe. The number of granaries still operational, as well as gas and oil being brought into Sueda Governorate, is very limited in light of a siege by the Damascus regime. Now, General Kupelwasser, we only have 3 minutes left, unfortunately, for this, but there are Druze and Christians there living who are looking towards Israel, looking towards the West, which the Christians there have looked at for quite many years, but they are not receiving the response they were hoping for. And this raises many questions into what can be done at a time when the Damascus regime objectively and clearly is utilizing humanitarian aid as a political and military tool in order to subjugate the people there.
Well, I think first of all, we have to deal with this matter on the diplomatic level and try to convince the Americans and other Western countries not to support the Shara regime as long as they don't allow for the humanitarian needs of the population in the Sueda area reach their goal. And this is something that has to be done immediately. And I hope that there are some negotiations and discussions about this matter as we speak. Secondly, if this fails, we still have the military option, and we can use force in order to make it happen. But I hope that this would not be necessary, because the Americans have definitely some leverage over the Shara regime right now. The entire policy of the Shara regime is to gain international support, especially Western support. And this is becoming the weak point right now, because if they want it, they have to behave themselves. And we know that whenever you ease the pressure on them, they immediately you see some massacres against the Alawites, against some activity against the Kurds, some activity against the Druze. So the pressure should be continuous and effective. And if this is not going to work, then we have the military deployed nearby.
Thank you, General Kuperwasser. One sentence, General Shafir.
I think we have an obligation to the Druze in the Sweda area, and we should provide them with humanitarian aid at a sustainable level, be it through peace means or through military means, while these diplomatic efforts are undertaken. We owe this to the Druze community in Israel, and this is probably what is going to be undertaken.
General Gavish, half a sentence.
I'm going back to moral and the obligation that we have here in Israel toward our Druze citizens. They are part of Israel. They are fighting with us shoulder to shoulder. And if this is a huge concern of them, I think this is also a huge concern of us.
Well, just to point out that Gdud Cherev, which was a brigade-sized or battalion-sized unit, 299 as it was called at the time, originated actually from Sweda Governorate. When in the War of Independence it was sent to protect the Druze in Israel by the Syrian regime, it found out that the Druze were actually aligned with Israel. And as such, they decided to stay and fight in support of Israel's independence and establishment. That is just a piece of history that many people tend to forget. But with that, this is all the time that we have for today. I'd like to thank General Kuperwasser, General Shafir, and General Gavish for all of your insights today, and to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom. Israel has launched operations
on Vladimir Putin.
helping Iran develop. We have logic, we have rationale, we understand how the system operates.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.